Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
All right, let's dive right into today's explainer. We're exploring a comprehensive documentary source that chronicles a sweeping 60-year epic, the life of Prophet Muhammad. And you know, regardless of your background, this is absolutely one of those stories that undeniably changed the map of the world forever. Now, to really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this history, we first have to understand the Age of Ignorance, or Ayam al-Jahiliyyah. The source paints a pretty grim picture of a harsh 6th century Arabian reality. It describes a society totally plunged into darkness. We're talking rampant idolatry with 360 idols in the sacred Kaaba, endless tribal warfare where human blood was cheaper than water, and literally unimaginable social injustices, like the practice of burying infant daughters alive. It was, quite frankly, a world desperate for a savior. So here's our roadmap for today. First, from orphan to al-Amin. 2. Revelation and Meccan persecution. 3. The Hijra to Medina. 4. The battles for survival. And finally, we'll wrap up with the conquest of Mecca.
Okay, Section 1, from orphan to al-Amin, covering those early years in Mecca.
Just imagine the profound vulnerability of his early childhood. Born fatherless in 570 CE, he loses his mother at just 6 years old in the middle of the desert, and then his guardian grandfather passes away when he's only 8. Yet, the source notes a path guided by divine protection, leading him through life as a shepherd until he finally finds stability at 25. And that happens through his marriage to Khadija, a highly respected businesswoman who clearly recognized his extraordinary character.
What's really fascinating here is that even in a society where deceit and oppression were kind of the norm, his character just completely stood out. It stood out so immensely that he earned the title Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy. People were literally trusting him with their valuables long before he ever claimed prophethood.
You can actually see this master peacemaker reputation in action during an incident when he was 35. After a severe flood damaged the Kaaba, the local tribes nearly fought a massive, pride-fueled war over who would have the honor of placing the sacred black stone back in its spot. So they agree, the first man to enter the gate would decide. And guess who walks in? Al-Amin. Using just incredible wisdom, he places the stone on a cloak, and as every single tribal leader lift an edge together, boom, a devastating war averted in an instant.
Moving right along to Section 2, Revelation and Meccan persecution, the call to prophethood and the crucible of Mecca.
So deeply troubled by the degradation of his society, he frequently starts isolating himself in the cave of Hira. And it's here, at age 40, that the angel Gabriel appears with this massive cosmic command, Iqra, meaning read. Talk about a paradigm shift. A solitary seeker of truth is suddenly burdened with a message that challenges literally everything his society stood for. As you might guess, when he starts openly preaching, the Meccan leaders are absolutely furious. They issue these intense ultimatums to his protective uncle, Abu Talib. Facing the loss of his only earthly protection, his response shows this mountain-like firmness. Look at this defiant quote. He's basically saying, no amount of worldly power, no impossible bribes are gonna stop this mission.
Because his message of one God directly threatened the whole idolatry-based economy and the power structures of the Quraysh, they unleashed some brutal persecutions. Slaves like Bilal were tortured out on the scorching desert sands. The Prophet himself faced assassination attempts and intense public humiliation. It got so bad that some Muslims had to flee to Abyssinia just to survive. And finally, out of pure desperation, the Quraysh enforced a ruthless social and economic boycott against the Prophet's entire clan.
Three whole years. That is the staggering amount of time the Muslims and his clan endured an agonizing, starving blockade in a barren valley. We're talking eating tree leaves to survive while wealthy Meccans bought up all the food. This brutal siege only ended when the physical boycott pact hanging in the Kaaba was miraculously destroyed by termites.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Hijra to Medina, the Great Migration and a New Dawn.
After enduring what was called the Year of Sorrow, losing both his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, things were looking incredibly bleak. Desperate Meccan Muslims began securing these secret alliances with tribes from Medina during the Hajj season. It's basically a covert operation that culminates in a vow of military protection. When the Quraysh finalize a terrifying plot to have multiple assassins strike the Prophet all at once, he makes a miraculous escape under the cover of night. This migration in 622 CE is known as the Hijra, establishing a completely new base in Medina.
And the contrast between these two cities? Literally night and day. You've got the terrifying systemic oppression of Mecca on one hand versus the incredible sanctuary of Medina on the other. In Medina, the local allies, called the Ansar, literally shared half of their wealth, their homes, and their gardens with the destitute Meccan refugees who were known as the Muhajirun. I mean, that is a bond of brotherhood you rarely see in human history.
But he doesn't just find a place to hide out. He actually builds a society. He drafts the Medina Charter, which is widely considered the world's first written constitution. It established religious freedom, mutual defense, and peace among all the resident tribes, including the local Jewish tribes. It really laid the groundwork for a secure, multi-faith state.
Okay, Section 4. The Battles for Survival. Defending the Infancy of Islam.
Because, of course, the Quraysh back in Mecca weren't just going to let them live in peace. This led to 3 defining conflicts that taught the nascent community some incredibly harsh lessons. Badr was a miraculous defensive victory. Uhud was a devastating lesson in obedience, where a nearly won battle turned into a blood-soaked setback just because some archers left their posts. And then the Battle of the Trench, where the Prophet employed a completely innovative Persian strategy, digging a massive trench to repel a huge alliance that wanted to wipe them out entirely.
To really put the stakes into perspective here, at the Battle of Badr, a mere 313 poorly equipped Muslims faced a massive, well-armed Quraysh army of 1,000 men. Yet, driven by sheer faith and what the source describes as divine intervention, they secured a victory that entirely shifted the Arabian balance of power.
And finally, Section 5, the conquest of Mecca, a bloodless return and ultimate forgiveness.
The road back to Mecca actually kicks off with this seemingly humiliating peace pact, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. But it was strategic. It actually allowed Islam to spread rapidly in an environment of peace. The Prophet even started sending letters out to world emperors, inviting them to his faith. But then, in the 8th year, the Quraysh treacherously break the treaty by slaughtering an allied tribe. Big mistake. That triggers a massive, secret march right back on Mecca.
Look at this growth, from just 313 men at Badr to 10,000 now. Just imagine the absolute psychological shock when the Meccans look out and see 10,000 campfires blazing in the desert darkness right outside their city. The previously arrogant Quraysh leadership was utterly terrified into a bloodless surrender. The tables had completely 100% turned.
But here's the kicker. Instead of marching in with the typical arrogance of a conquering, vengeful king, which was standard operating procedure back then, he enters with profound humility. The accounts say his head was bowed so low it practically touched the back of his camel. He goes straight to the Kaaba, strikes down all 360 idols, and purifies the sanctuary without spilling a single drop of blood.
And then we hit the absolute climax of this whole epic. Standing before the very people who had tortured his followers, starved his family, and driven him from his home, he asks them what treatment they expect. They're trembling, obviously hoping for some kind of mercy. And he issues this unprecedented declaration of mass forgiveness. Today there is no blame upon you. Go, for you are free.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. It's an incredible full-circle moment. How does the journey of a persecuted, starving orphan who rises to conquer a city, not with a sword, but solely through forgiveness, challenge our modern understanding of what true power, legacy, and leadership really look like? Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and keep learning.